Hi there, this is Matt with State of Flux here with a review for The Abyss. Continuing on with my examination of the James Cameron films, this is the third feature film that he did under his own right, independent of, Piranha 2: The Spawning, for which he was fired multiple times. As a follow-up to Aliens, this was an intriguing one because it's much more grounded, or the presentation of the film is much more grounded in reality than either of his previous two other films. Yet there is a sci-fi slant that seeps into the movie that's hinted at early on, but comes into fruition in the final act of the movie. The first two acts of the film are played much more straight, of this looming threat of nuclear destruction that is facing the characters, much like was facing the world at the time. This movie came out at the close of the Cold War, and those feelings and sentiments and fears are still baked into this film very much. And, well, traditionally I don't really like movies that kind of harness that fear and whatnot. I think this one does so in a way that works relatively well. Most of that is because Michael Biehn gives a phenomenal performance. Now, he was incredible as Kyle Reese. He offered a certain amount of gravitas as Hicks, but this is the film that I think he gives one of the best performances of his entire career, and I know that James Cameron really tried to get him an Oscar nomination for this, and it's kind of a shame that he wasn't able to secure that, because he gives a performance that's really that damn good. But I think the problem was the theatrical cut of the film, even though that doesn't really alter any of his character much, isn't as good as the director's cut. Had I think the director's cut been the thing that went into the cinemas, most people recognize the director's cut to be a very good movie. Most people think that the theatrical cut seems fractured, and that's because that stuff with the sci-fi element and the last act really seems to come out of nowhere. With the director's cut, it's baked in a little more organically to the point where you get to that final act and it can really resonate as it should. And that's where the special edition really finds its success. Had that been the thing that was released in theaters in 1989, I think Michael Biehn gets his Oscar nomination, and I think this movie gets a lot more love and praise. As is, this is kind of the forgotten James Cameron movie, along with one other movie that he would go on to make a couple years down the line. They're the two movies, while not bad, that often are overlooked. However, this one specifically has some incredibly hardcore fans, and I think it's because this is an incredible piece of drama fiction. Now, it gets a little melodramatic, but I don't think that's a bad thing. It really works for me. And that's because Ed Harris and, Mastrantonio, I can't remember her first name, they absolutely dominate the material that they're given. When she is under threat of her life being stripped away from her, and he is actively trying to prevent her death, it is one of the most stunning sequences that I've ever seen in a movie. It's something that has lingered with me from the day that I saw it to this day, and I think about it constantly. If I'm writing fiction and stuff like that, I'm trying to write a scene that's as good as her death scene, so to speak. And this is coming right after the scene with which she makes the sacrifice so that Bud can go and, he's the better swimmer, get her second chance, so to speak. I'm not going to spoil whether or not that actually happens, but for those who have not seen this. But it is an incredible scene that's followed by an even more incredible one. Both of these actors give the best performance I have ever seen either of them give, and that's saying something, especially with Ed Harris, who has gone on multiple times over and given, I think, career-worthy performances, none better than in this, for want of a better word, sappy romance. This is about two estranged people within a marriage. Their marriage has completely deteriorated. They don't like each other. They don't want to be around each other, and they're forced to be with each other. And it's through that reconnection that these characters are able to reconnect and kind of rub off the abrasive qualities that each character has and find that with which they fell in love with in the first place. And this is going back to what I was saying in the previous film, what Cameron is good at. He's good at giving us love stories. Now, he gave us a fairy tale love story in the Terminator. He gave us a parental love story or a maternal love story in Aliens. Here, he gives you a fractured love story about reconnection. And it is one of the finest pieces I can think of. The last half hour of this movie, assuming you go with it and take the film's journey, is some of the best filmmaking James Cameron has ever done. Full stop. It is emotional, it is resonant, it is powerful, it has something to say. Excuse my phone, usually I mute that. It has something to say, and that something to say is really quite profound, while also being very simple and very on the nose and very baked into the theme of anti-war that this film has. And that is truly that the way to beat war and hate is through love. And it sounds dumb, it sounds dopey, it sounds like something you'd read on a card. And you know what? It is. James Cameron's movies have always had this quality to them. He always kind of puts on Front Street what these are about. That show don't tell, he didn't learn that. He flat out tells you without having to show you. Yet he does it in such an incredible, crowd-pleasing way that it's successful 99% of the time. And this is one of those times. But I think this movie would have been honestly forgotten, or at least not revisited as much, if it hadn't been the gateway to what would come, and that is the brilliant special effects that kind of were pioneered with this film. Yes, computer-generated technology had been utilized in films prior to this one, such as Star Trek II Wrath of Khan with Pixar, or early Pixar, Lucas Animated or whatever, doing the Genesis project thing, or young Sherlock with the pane of glass that comes to life. But really it was used most successfully and in a completely realistic looking way in The Abyss. That scene, even to this day, holds up incredibly well, especially in the 4K transfer. I know some people don't like Cameron's 4Ks. I'm not going to get into that. Watch my Aliens review if you want to hear my thoughts on the 4K of it all. But the point is, the special effects themselves hold the F up, and it is an impressive feat, if you ask me, that he is able to do this in 1989. This is 4 years removed from Jurassic Park and 2 from Terminator 2. Yet it's through this technology that a certain level of comfort was established for him to really agree to do Terminator 2 and do it in the way that he had planned, with having something that was unique and different about the Terminator. He was able to harness the liquid in this film. In the next one, we're going to be talking about liquid metal and all that comes with that. But it's that quality that draws cinephiles to this movie. They want to see something where it was the first time in a movie to see something. This just so happens to be a good movie in an otherwise forgotten movie from a master of his works film library, honestly. And I think that's why this film has the fandom that it has, even though that fandom may not be as loud or vociferous or obvious as Aliens or the Terminator movies or Titanic or Avatar. It is a cultivated group of people who've discovered this movie and really want to sing its praises. I'm one of them. This was, at a time in my life, one of my 5 favorite feature films. I can't say that anymore. I can't even necessarily say this is one of my 5 favorite James Cameron films, if I'm honest with myself. Actually, I think it would be. It would be number 5. But this is a glorious movie, a 4-star movie. And I think, as I say, a lot of it has to do with how Cameron was able to push boundaries with its visual effects, but also with its practical effects. This also utilized great underwater sequences. I think all the stuff photographed underwater is completely believable and completely interesting visually, and it immerses you in the abyss of it all. And it gives you this really interesting quality of breathable water, the pink water that's used throughout the movie, and how that comes into play at the end is really quite ingenious. And I just gotta be honest, I love this movie. And I am in the camp that I wish more people would be talking about it, because it's great. Coming back to it so many years later, I do think the first act is kind of clunky. I like the stuff with the main couple, the divorced couple. That stuff works, and I like what's going on setting up Michael Biehn's arc for the second half. But a lot of that first act is pretty clunky. Well photographed, well acted, but clunky. The second act really picks up and builds on the tension, and that stuff is fantastic, but it's the last act that cements the quality of the film and really smooths over any issues that I had with the first act. When you have a conclusion that's so resoundingly amazing as this film has, it's able to get you to forget the first 40 minutes are a touch of a yawner, and I think that's what has held me back from saying that this is one of my 5 favorite films anymore. But it's a great, great movie. Let me know what you think of The Abyss in the comments down below. I first saw this back when it was released in its director's cut form on VHS in I want to say this was 96, maybe it was 90, yeah, I think it was 96. And I was just completely spellbound by the quality of it. And I went to school the next day and started talking to my friends about it, and nobody had heard of this movie. So I had this opportunity to be like, you liked Aliens, you liked the Terminator, check this out. And then I was able to pass this film around, and I really got people invested in it. And I think that's the quality of life this film has been able to secure, because it certainly wasn't able to do so necessarily at the box office when it came out. Anyway, long-winded way of saying, love this movie. I do give it 4 stars, even with its clunky opening. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And next month, on Judgment Day, we will have a review for Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.